This is Mrs. Boots, and we're going to work through our practice problems for the determinant and the inverse of matrices. So we have 8 different matrices that we're going to find the determinant for, and the first 6 we're going to find the inverse as well. So remember, with our determinant, it's kind of like a cross multiplication. So the determinant of the matrix A, we would start first row, first column, so it would be 6 times 5. We're going to subtract 2 times the negative 1. So 6 times 5 is 30, and 2 times negative 1 is 2. So my determinant is 32. Now let's take that and use that to write our inverse. So my inverse of my A matrix, you remember you start with 1 over the determinant, so it's 1 divided by 32. I'm going to swap A and D. So the 5 and the 6 change places. The 2 and the negative 1 switch signs. Now we would distribute that negative 32. So we would have 5 over 32, negative 2 over 32, 1 over 32, and 6 over 32. You could plug each one of those values into the calculator and get decimals if you would like. Matrix B. First thing is the determinant. Remember, still cross multiplying. So my determinant of matrix B is going to be 4 times 5 minus 7 times 0. Kind of anticlimactic. 4 times 5 is 20, minus 0 is still 20. Now let's use that to actually find our inverse matrix. So to find our inverse, you start with the determinant, 1 divided by that determinant, which is 20. Now A and D change places, so the 5 and the 4 switch places. The 0 and the 7 change signs. Well, the sign of 0 is just going to be 0. It's kind of no real change needed there. Now we need to divide by the 20. So we're going to have 5 divided by 20, which is 1/4. 0 divided by 20, still 0. Negative 7 divided by 20, and then 4 divided by 20 is 1/5. You could plug it in the calculator and get decimal values. Matrix C. First, the determinant. For the determinant, we cross multiply. 3 times negative 3 minus 11 times negative 1. So this is negative 9 plus 11. So my determinant is equal to 2. Now let's use that to find our inverse matrix for C. Remember, we start with 1 divided by the determinant, which is 2. Now, which ones switch places? The negative 3 and the positive 3 switch places. The 1 and the 11 change signs. Now divide everything by 2. I'm going to put this one in decimal just to make you more comfortable. So negative 3 divided by 2 is negative 1.5. 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. 11 divided by 2 is negative 5.5. And 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. Matrix D. First step, find the determinant. Okay, remember, cross multiply. 3 times negative 2 minus 1 times 0. Well, that's just going to be negative 6. So that's the determinant. Now let's use that to find the inverse matrix. Remember, it's 1 over the determinant, so 1 divided by negative 6. The 3 and the negative 2 switch places. The 0 and the 1 change signs. Now let's divide by the determinant. Negative 2 divided by negative 6 would become positive 1/3. 0, well, it's still 0. Then I would end up with a positive 1/6 and a negative 1/2. This is the inverse of the D matrix. The F matrix. Again, first step's the determinant. It's a cross multiply. So I have 1/4 times 8, and I did convert mine to fractions to make it a little easier to see, times 16 minus 16 times negative 1/4. So 8 divided by 4 is 2, and then 16 divided by 4 is 4. So my determinant is 6. Now let's find our inverse. Which one switch places? Oh, that'll do 1 over the determinant. Now switch places. The 8 and the 1/4, positive 1/4 switch. The negative 1/4 becomes positive, and the 16 becomes negative. Now we're ready to actually divide everything by 6. So 8 divided by 6, simplify the fraction, becomes 4/3. 1 over 4 and 1 over 6 becomes 1 over 24. 16 divided by 6 becomes a negative 8/3. And the 1/6 and 1/4 becomes again 1 over 24. G matrix. This one's a little bit more complicated simply because we're going to have to use a calculator. But let's do our determinant. Remember, we cross multiply. So I have negative 5.7 times 2 minus 3.2 times 1.6. Put all that in the calculator, and I get 6.28. It's kind of crazy, but still possible. So to do my inverse of my G matrix, I do 1 divided by the determinant. It doesn't matter that it's a decimal, we're just going to divide everything by it in a minute. Now, which ones do we swap? Yep, the 2 and the negative 5.7 change places. The 1.6 becomes negative, and the 3.2 becomes negative. Now let's divide by the 6.28. And I'm going to get 0.32 and negative 0.25 on the first row. On the second row, negative 0.51 and negative 0.91. This is the inverse matrix for G. Now the J matrix. We're only going to do the determinant for J. Remember, because it's a 3 by 3 matrix, we have to copy column 1 and column 2 off to the side. Negative 2 and 5, 0, 3, negative 25. Those get copied. Now we're going to go down and we're going to go up. We do all the downs first. Follow the diagonal. All the downs first. So, I'm going to label it downs and put it in a big old bracket. Not because it's a matrix, but just to identify it. So I have 10 times 3 times 4 plus, well, 0 times, so it's just 0, plus 11 times negative 2 times negative 25. Okay, that's all my downs. Now remember, we're going to subtract the ups. So the ups mark the ups. We start in the bottom left corner. Follow the diagonals going up. So I have 5 times 3 times 11 plus negative 25 times negative 1 times 10 plus 4 times negative 2 times 0. So there's that 0 again. We can ignore the terms that have the 0 because when you add 0, you just get 0. It's beautiful that way. So I add all my downs together and I get 670. Now I have to subtract the ups. Add all the ups together, I get 415. So downs minus ups is 255. That is the determinant for the J matrix. Last practice problem. Let's find the determinant of K. Remember, the first thing I have to do is reproduce columns 1 and 2 off to the side. So I have negative 7, 3, 0, and 1, 0, 5. Now we need to do our downs and our ups. Downs come first. For my downs, follow the diagonal. All 3 diagonals. So I have negative 7 times 0 times 4. That's 0. 1 times 1 times 0. And then 9 times 3 times 5. That's my downs. Now let's go through and do the ups. Remember, ups, opposite direction, start in the bottom corner, go diagonally up. So 0, 0, 9 is 0. Then I have 5 times 1 times negative 7. Then plus 4 times 3 times 1. Okay, now let's simplify. Downs first. 0 plus 0, 9 times 3 times 5 is 135. Now my ups. 5 times negative 7, negative 35, plus 12, negative 23. Remember, 2 negatives make a positive. So when I add those 2 terms together, I get 158. That is the determinant for the K matrix. This concludes all of the practice problems for this lesson.